But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload 3 or 4 times every week.
16 people died in this hole. I keep getting this, keeps popping up in my recs. I want to see what the hell they're talking about.
And when they get out of the car,
yeah, I just like started watching this guy the other day. I kind of like his channel.
Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads.
I've never seen him before.
All right, let's get into today's story.
Donkey Kong.
In 1938, a farmer in southeastern Australia decided to bring his horses to a watering hole on the other side of his large property. As he was leading the horses across this big, wide open field, one of his horses suddenly just collapsed to the ground. The farmer ran over to see what was going on, but as soon as he got over to it, the horse had stood back up again and seemed totally unhurt. The farmer was puzzled because he had no idea why the horse fell in the first place, and so he looked down to see if maybe it tripped on something, and he saw on the ground right beneath the horse was this small hole. And so he moved his horse out of the way, and then when he came back to look at this thing, he saw it was only maybe a foot across, but when he peered down into it, he saw it was very deep. And so he got down on his hands and knees to get a closer look, and when his eyes adjusted, he could not believe what he was seeing. 10 or 15 feet below the surface was this huge pool of clear water. The horse had just stepped into the roof of an underground cave. And so the farmer was really excited to see how big this cave was. And so he grabbed all his horses and he brought them back to the stable, and he got this long measuring rope with a weight at the end of it. So he runs back out to the hole, he puts the weight into the hole, and he begins paying out this rope. And so down it goes, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet. It just keeps on going and going until finally the weight hits solid land at 120 feet.
I don't know, something about a hole.
So the farmer's like, wow, this is a huge cave. So he pulls it back up thinking that's
always
the bottom,
interesting.
but in reality it wasn't. It actually extended down almost 300 additional feet. The farmer and his horse had just accidentally found one of the most beautiful and deadly freshwater caves in the world, called the Shaft. The reason it's called the Shaft is because the only way in or out of this underwater cave is through
something
this
more
hole
original
in the middle of this field that this horse
That
created.
is really weird
And it's
looking. That looks like a video game.
Shaft that goes down 18 feet until it reaches the surface of this massive underground body of water. The opening to this shaft is so narrow that cave divers, they can't get into it with their gear on their backs. So they literally need to be lowered into this cave by themselves, and then their gear is lowered down.
I don't know, that's the same fit I have on all the time. It's just backwards hat, long hair. So it probably looks like I have a mullet too.
120 feet when he believed he had reached the bottom of the cave. What he had actually touched was the top of something called the rock pile. The rock pile is basically this huge underwater pyramid that looks like a rock pile that sits at the bottom in the middle of this huge underwater cave. And from the top of this rock pile, you can go down it in all different directions. But once you get to the bottom, there's only 2 tunnels to choose from. There's one that goes west, basically down at an angle that dead ends at 260 feet. And then on the other side of this underwater pyramid is the eastern tunnel, and that's much more treacherous. It goes down at a more steep angle to 400 feet. The few elite divers...
Isn't Australia like moving faster than most continents? I don't know about going underground.
Stages to it. Stage 1 is from the surface down to 120 feet, the top of the rock pile. During this stage, the diver swims unobstructed in beautiful clear water with sunlight poking through the hole. It's a very easy section of the cave. And there's a safety line that's anchored from the surface straight down to the top of the rock pile. So you have something to hold on to as you go down and back up.
That guy looks like he's scared as fuck.
Get a bit dicey.
I mean, I would be too.
Stage 2 begins at the top of the rock pile and extends down all the way to the bottom of the westerly tunnel at 260 feet where it dead ends, or down to the 200-foot mark of the easterly tunnel where you come to something called the drop-off ledge. And it's quite literally a ledge in the middle of this tunnel where beyond it there's a fairly steep drop-off, and it leads down to an area that's so treacherous it's got its own stage. Starting with stage 2 and then with stage 3, there is no safety line to guide you in the direction you need to go. So you're on your own as soon as you reach the top of the rock pile. And so you make your way down any direction you want down the rock pile until you reach either of these tunnels, And as soon as you go into them, you immediately start to lose visibility because the sunlight cannot penetrate all the way into these tunnels. And so the diver becomes increasingly reliant on
I didn't think it was going to be like this, though. I thought it was going to be like a whole, like, sucking people in.
Navigate down stage 2
not like
not bump into the walls.
Splunking
because
thing.
doing so will knock the limestone silt off of the walls. It will create a cloud of it in their face. It will blind them. It's like being in fog, where a flashlight can't push through it. And so the diver has to either wait for the silt to clear, which could take a very long time, or they have to swim blind. Also, anyone entering stage 2 and stage 3, they can't breathe regular air out of their tanks. There's too much nitrogen in regular air. The deeper you dive, the more nitrogen your body will absorb, and if you have too much nitrogen in your system, it can give you something called nitrogen narcosis, which is like being really drunk. And in extreme cases, people have been known to take their mouthpiece out and inhale water, believing they're on the surface, or they'll confuse the direction up with the direction down, and to get to the surface, they will swim straight down until it's too late and they can't get back up again. And so divers that are going to be in stage 2 or stage 3 of this cave will breathe a special mix of gases that are low in nitrogen. The final stage of the shaft, stage 3, is just from the 200-foot mark of the easterly cave, so that drop-off ledge, all the way down to the bottom at 400 feet. This stage is unbelievably dangerous. As soon as you drop off that ledge, all the sunlight goes away. It is pitch black, and the tunnel narrows considerably and stays incredibly narrow. In fact, many times divers have to squeeze themselves past sections where the rocks are too close together. And so because you're inherently bumping into the walls all through stage 3, you're pretty much guaranteed to be silted out the entire time. At this depth, nitrogen narcosis is virtually guaranteed, even if you're breathing a special low nitrogen mix of gases. And so divers need to be ready to abort the dive at any moment.
It's weird that this is just like in a random field too. It's just like this extreme fucking cave dive.
The third stage section of the cave, they need to be careful of false domes. These are offshoots on the ceiling only in this third stage that look like the way out. And especially when things are silted out and it's dark, you're low on oxygen, you might be panicking, it'd be very easy to confuse these with the way out. But in fact, these false domes
that's how it always
exactly
happens. It's like something that confuses people and then they go too deep.
They go nowhere. Stage 3 is reserved exclusively for extremely experienced cave divers who get special permission. In 1973, 8 divers got permission to dive the first and second stages of the shaft cave. They did not get permission to dive the third stage of the cave. On May 28th of that year, the 8 divers arrived in that big open field near the cave opening and began prepping their gear. Their plan was to dive down all the way to the edge of the drop-off ledge, so looking into the third stage, and then once they got there, look around for a minute and then turn around and head back up to the surface. These 8 divers were experienced divers, but their experience was all in open water environments. None of them had dove in a cave. And so they were confident divers, but they were a little bit naive. They believed the dive down to the edge of the third stage was going to be fairly routine and would just be simple and fun. But before any of them had even gotten into the water, they had already made a critical mistake. Instead of jamming their bottle with the special low nitrogen mixed gas that they would need since they were going into stage 2, and so that's a requirement, instead of doing that, they just jammed their bottles with regular air. So they were basically guaranteeing that they would get nitrogen narcosis. But once they had all their gear prepped, they made their way over to the entrance to the shaft, and one by one they were lowered down into the water and their gear would follow. And then
real photo of a different dive, not the people that died.
They grabbed the safety line and they began their descent.
That looks insane, just like in the middle of a field like that.
Pile, and there they spent about 5 minutes taking pictures of each other before heading down the eastern tunnel. 3 of the divers were siblings, Glenn, Stephen, and Christine, who were 25, 22, and 19 respectively. And Glenn remembers after they made their way all the way down the eastern tunnel and they reached the drop-off ledge, he remembers seeing his sister, his brother, and all the other divers. Everyone seemed just fine. Everyone's just looking over this ledge. They're taking turns, kind of peering down into this black abyss that is stage 3. And then after 5 minutes or so, Glenn looked at his gauge and he saw his air was getting fairly low. Not emergency situation, but it was time to leave. And everybody else had the same amount of air as he did. And so everybody else was running low on air. And so Glenn was about to grab his sister, who was several feet right in front of him. She was still looking over the ledge down into stage 3. But when he reached out to grab her, she and all the other divers just suddenly jumped forward and dove straight down into the abyss out of sight. They dove into the stage 3 section. This was not something that Glenn was tracking anybody doing. This was not something anyone said they were going to do. This was not part of the dive. This was very dangerous, and they weren't allowed to go down there.
They just like all did it at the same time
after them to try to grab his sister and stop her, or grab his brother, or grab any of them. But as soon as he went over that ledge, he saw it was totally pitch black and it was completely silted out from all these divers suddenly launching over the edge. And so Glenn knows he's not going to find them in the silt. It's also very dangerous for him alone to just dive down there. And so he figures, you know what, I'm sure they're fine. They probably planned this out and they're just going to go down a little ways and they'll come back up again. And so I'll just go to the rock pile and wait for them. And so Glenn turns around and he goes up back over the drop-off ledge. He makes his way to the rock pile and he just sits there facing the eastern tunnel, waiting for his brother, his sister, and the other divers to come back out again. But they don't. And finally, his air gauge gets so low that he literally has to go to the surface.
That's a weird story.
He's thinking to himself, if my air is this low, what are they doing down there? 24-year-old Larry Reynolds was one of the divers that went with Glenn's sister and brother and the other two divers into this forbidden third stage section of the cave. Although he doesn't say this, it sounded like he and the others just wanted to go a little ways into this off-limit section, check it out, and then turn around and go back to the surface. And so Larry would say, as soon as they went over the ledge and they're in this third stage, it went completely pitch black and the tunnel immediately constricted dramatically. And so as they're going down this very tight and pitch black tunnel, they reach a section that's so tight, they're down on their stomachs, literally pulling themselves
all those
through.
People.
And so after a few minutes of the group forcing themselves into this unbelievably dangerous place, it's like they all collectively realized, this is a terrible idea, we need to turn back. And so as they all began turning around, they realized their return trip just back up to the drop-off ledge, which was only maybe 25 feet, was completely silted out. And so Larry is in the back of this return trip line, and right in front of him is Christine. And so as soon as they all make their way into the silt, the only thing Larry can see with his flashlight is Christine's fins. And so he's staying right up on her and keeping his light on that fin to make sure he's going in the right direction. And so after only a few moments, Christine's fins just suddenly disappear. And so Larry's thinking, I don't know where she went, but I don't have enough time. I have almost no air. And so he just keeps on swimming, believing he's going the right way. And sure enough, he clears out of the silt and he goes up and back over the drop-off ledge. And he shines his light back up the eastern tunnel, back up towards the rock pile,
literally drowning music
the entire time. And the other divers he was just with, but he's looking and there's no one there. There's no silt. It's totally clear. And there's not one diver in front of him. And so he looks at his gauge again and he's got a little bit of air, enough to maybe go down and make sure nobody is still down there. Because he's thinking, I don't think it's possible they could have swam all the way through this tunnel in this space of time. So he turns around, he goes back over the drop-off ledge, back into the silt, and as he's moving very slowly and cautiously, up ahead he sees flashlights moving around on the ceiling of the tunnel. And so he moves down towards this flashing light, and he realizes the light is coming from inside of a false dome right above him.
Oh my
God. So
God.
He looks up, and he saw there was Christine and another man named Roberts, who was 28, frantically swimming around, shining their lights, looking for the way out, not realizing they're in this dead end. And so Larry was about to shine his light to get their attention when Larry's flashlight went out.
Oh my
and so
God.
now Larry is in complete darkness. He is completely silted out. He doesn't even know how much air he has left because he can't shine the light on it. And so he's starting to panic. He starts banging on his flashlight, and finally the light comes back on. And when it does, he shines it straight up again to try to shine it towards Christine and Roberts, but he had drifted farther down the tunnel. And so by the time he shined his light, he wasn't underneath the false dome. But when he shined his light in the other direction, he saw he was at the very far end of where the group had gone. And so farther down into stage 3 was clear. There was no silt. And so he shined his light down into the stage 3 tunnel, and way down the tunnel, barely visible, he sees there is one diver with his flashlight out swimming the wrong direction down into oblivion.
Oh my God.
His name was John. He was 20 years old, and he almost certainly had nitrogen narcosis. Larry knew he could not save him. And so Larry turned around and went back into the silt, back up in the direction of the rock pile, touching the ceiling, looking for that entrance into the false dome to try to help Christine and Roberts. But he's not finding it, and he's looking at his air gauge, and it's getting critically low, and he knows if he doesn't go soon, he's going to die. And so at some point, after not finding the entrance to this false dome, He decides he just has to go out and save himself. And so he manages to get out of the silt. He goes up and over the drop-off ledge. He gets to the rock pile. He grabs the safety line and he fins himself up to the surface. And when he gets to the surface, he looks around.
Yeah, it's like a legit horror
3
movie.
other divers up there,
Man.
one of which is Glenn. And Glenn, he looks
They lost
visibly
7
panicked,
people.
and he yells to Larry, "Hey, have you seen my brother and my sister? Have you seen the others? Are they coming up after you?" And Larry looks at him and just shakes his head. He didn't know what to say. He knew they were gone. But for Glenn, this was his baby brother, his baby sister. He had to go back down. And so with the little bit of air he had left, he put his mouthpiece in, he turned around and he dove straight down as fast as he could, staring towards the opening of the eastern tunnel, praying that his family members, that his friends are going to come out of there. But as he's swimming down and he's running out of air, no one was coming out of that tunnel. And so finally, when his air was basically empty, he had to turn around. And on that return trip back to the surface, he realized his siblings and his 2 friends were gone. It would take 11 months and 11 days to finally locate and recover all 4 of the bodies inside of the cave. John, the 20-year-old who Larry saw swimming in the wrong direction, was found fairly far down the eastern tunnel, laying on a rocky outcropping. Glenn's 22-year-old brother, Stephen, was found just 50 feet from the entrance of the shaft, but it's believed he died at a much lower depth and then floated up to that position. Glenn's 19-year-old sister, Christine, and the 28-year-old man, Roberts, that she was with inside of the false dome were found embracing each other just under the false dome inside of the tunnel.
Jeez.
Investigators believe when they were in there, they couldn't find the exit and then realized that they had so little air that even if they found the exit, they would not get out in time. And so knowing they were just minutes away from death, they abandoned looking for the exit and instead just embraced each other while they died. And then afterwards, they floated down and out of the false dome. After this tragedy, the shaft was permanently closed to all divers, but years later, they would.
Yeah, those signs are so scary.
Guys. If you
the
found
fucking Grim Reaper with the dead divers.
Let us know in the comments section what it is and where you found it, so give us the timestamp. And if you're the first to do that, we'll pin you at the top of the comments section.
I'm surprised there's not like a game that like makes use of that.
Episode and you haven't done this already, please offer to take the like button out to a very nice restaurant outside of town, and when they get out of the car, tell them.
Now we're going to McDonald's, the like button. All right, let's watch one more. All right, I'm looking up a new animated channel, just clicking on the first one I see. The Haunted House. Don't know anything about it.
Whenever we hear of haunted houses,
That's like really quiet.
it usually entails a long history of strange and unexplained disturbances. But this story is quite different and inspired by true events. I won't be mentioning any names or any
I haven't checked out the rubber
location,
yet.
but I will tell you that it happened in the mid-90s, somewhere in North Devon, England.
Where's North Devon?
We were a family of 4 and had lived in the house for around 8 years without any paranormal events. So it was very surprising to experience this on the very same day we were moving out. The
Looks like
truck
someone
wasn't
dropped a
quite
bunch of
large
paper
enough to
in their
fit all of
fucking
our
driveway.
things, so we ended up squeezing everything else
Like, who
into the
dropped all that
car,
paper?
which meant that there wasn't enough room for all of us to travel together. I was asked to stay behind, while my parents unloaded everything from the car into the new house, which wasn't too far away, so I had no reason to suspect that I would have to wait long. I was left with a single key to the front door that I locked as soon as they left,
key.
and my mother instructed me to keep all the windows upstairs closed because the neighbor's cat kept wandering onto the property and getting into the house. One of the things that surprised me though as I went into my old room was seeing a mirror hanging on the wall that I'd never seen before, as it had been previously hidden from view.
Yeah, this
by the
animation's
wardrobe that was
different.
there. Knowing that the mirror had been
It looks like it was
there
done in
all these years
Blender.
without my knowledge was kind of strange, and it only provided a blurred out reflection due to all the dust. It appeared to be
Definitely
firmly
not the
secured
same
to the wall, which
in
I
the
guess is why
animation.
my parents decided to leave it there. After locking all the upstairs windows and making sure there were no uninvited felines inside the house, I waited patiently for the sound of my
That would
dad's
be pretty
car
cool.
pulling up on the driveway. But 3 hours later, I was still waiting, and it was already getting dark.
I don't know, Ben 10.
Remember, this was back in the 90s, and cell phones weren't all that common just yet. So there was no way of contacting my parents, and I remember feeling extremely bored at the time.
Read a book.
A cell phone would have been a real lifesaver back then, for more reasons than one. But I would have settled for my old
Yeah, it looks a
hacky-sack
little
or
like-
even one of my sister's Tamagotchis to kill the time. Unfortunately, most of the light bulbs in the house had been removed, except for the one above the staircase, which I turned on, although I decided to stay in the living room because the temperature upstairs was a lot colder for some reason.
He lived in this house, right? I don't understand what's happening.
About an hour later, it started to rain, and I was feeling hungry. I regretted not taking anything to eat with me, although I didn't expect to be waiting this long. So I went into the kitchen to see if there was any food that had been left behind in one of the cabinets. As I searched the kitchen, I couldn't ignore this thought in the back of my mind of being left out. I hadn't even seen the new house yet, and the fact that my younger sister got to see it before I did kind of bothered me a little. After realizing there wasn't any food in the kitchen, I returned to the window in the living room. As I contemplated several scenarios as to why my dad hadn't arrived yet, I heard something moving around the house. At
His
first,
expression
I
hasn't
suspected
changed the
it was the
entire
sound
time.
of the trees blowing in the wind outside, until I saw something that sent a cold shiver down my spine. The sight of someone passing in front of the window caused me to huddle into a corner where I waited motionless and completely terrified. I then heard tapping on the glass from the kitchen window, but I couldn't bear to look to see who it was, and instead just imagined the same dark figure staring through the window.
Who is it?
After the tapping stopped, it got really quiet, at least for a while. The sound of shattered glass coming from upstairs caught me completely off guard. I suspected that someone assumed the house was empty and decided to break in for whatever reason.
But if it was empty, why would they break
Even
in?
more horrifying as I began hearing
I guess the
footsteps
squad there.
descending the old staircase. With no curtains or furniture, even the slightest sound would reverberate through the entire house, and there were very few places to hide. So I
What is
snuck
right,
into
baby?
another corner, facing away from the hallway to avoid being seen. As I anticipated the horror of coming face to face with an intruder, the loud footsteps suddenly came to a stop at the base of the stairs, likely blocking my only exit through the front door. I could hear the wind now probably howling through a broken window upstairs, chilling every room in the house. I was in a state of panic at that point, until suddenly I could hear footsteps again, but this time heading up the stairs. Now I was faced with a dilemma, because the intruder was probably going to wait until the rain stopped before leaving the house, and could decide to head back downstairs at any moment.
At any moment.
I wasn't keen on the idea of running outside and down the street in the pouring rain, but I no longer felt safe in the house, so I cautiously headed towards the front door.
Those stairs look
As I
like if anyone
approached the
walked on
door,
them, they would just
The risk of
explode.
being seen seemed extremely likely, but I thought
Minecraft
if I
stairs.
was fast enough, I would be
Like
able
you
to
can make
escape
stairs
and
like
call
that?
for help. The desperate knock on the door sent me running back to the dining room, as I immediately assumed that the intruder had an accomplice and was waiting to be let in. After anticipating the sound of more footsteps on the stairs,
Well, they thought no one was in there. Why would
I
they not?
heard a voice at the door. I couldn't make out what was being said, but it sounded desperate. Then I heard knocking on the living room window, so I slowly peeked around the corner to see if I could get a glance of who it was. The poor lighting only provided a silhouette, and I still wasn't sure who was outside, although I did begin to think it was strange that no one had come down the stairs yet.
Oh, they are.
I
up there?
positioned myself for a clear view of the front door, which is when I witnessed the letterbox slowly begin to open. That's when I heard my dad's voice calling my name. I didn't hear a car pull up on the driveway or see any lights.
Skinwalker?
I quickly opened the door and was surprised to see my dad completely soaking wet from the rain. Ironically, he asked me why I took so long to answer the door.
He looks scary.
Which is when I told him about the intruder upstairs. He seemed strangely convinced that I was making it up, and despite pleading with him not to go upstairs, he went anyway. Only to discover
No,
that
Dad.
no one was there.
Don't do it.
We both searched the whole house and found nothing. No signs of a break-in. Windows and doors were all closed and locked, and the carpet was dry. The sound of shattered glass came from the old mirror that smashed despite never falling from the wall. And there was no plausible explanation for the loud footsteps I heard on the staircase. When I asked my dad why he delayed so much to pick me up, he went on to explain that the car got boxed in by the truck at the other house and had to wait until everything was unloaded before he could leave. And to make matters worse, the car broke down just a few blocks away. To this day, I still get a sense that my dad doesn't believe me and thinks I was just too ashamed to admit that I smashed the mirror out of frustration because I was left alone for so long. But I knew what I experienced was real, and it's something that has stayed with me even after all these years. As for the person who passed in front of the window,
just smashing windows since he got left
we
alone.
later confirmed it was the neighbor.
So mad.
However, the events of that night came up shortly after in a conversation with my dad, and I asked him why he wasn't afraid of going up those stairs after telling him that there was an intruder in the house. What he said next just left me completely speechless and shook me up pretty good. He told me that he wasn't afraid because just as he was approaching the house, he saw me in the window upstairs. He tried to wave to get my attention, but he said I had this strange ghostly expression on my face, so he gave up and knocked on the door instead. The smashed mirror on the wall, loud footsteps on the staircase, and an apparent doppelganger in the window upstairs were enough to keep me away from that house.
I mean, they're doppelgangers of each other already. They look exactly the same. I like the music for that one. But who really died that day?
In today's top story, we're reminded why truth is often stranger than fiction.
This one might be a little too long. I'm gonna watch something a little shorter.
In
today. Here we go.
One night last summer, two of my friends, Sam and Jake, convinced me to sneak out with them and drink. We were all bored, just looking for something to do. We decided to go for a walk to a local gas station that was open 24 hours a day. The walk there was pretty uneventful. We talked about random topics and drank a couple of beers. Once we got to the gas station, Jake had to use the bathroom. When he was in the bathroom, there was a dirty, sketchy guy in there. Jake struck up a conversation with this guy. It was pretty normal, except when the guy asked why he was out so late, and if he was by himself. Jake brushed it off as the guy was just trying to tell him to stay safe. We bought some snacks and we noticed the guy following us around while he was talking to someone on his phone. We left soon after.
Looks
and
like
on
the guy
way
from
back,
Hey Arnold.
We
That's
sat
like
on the side of the road
from
and
Eastern
talked
Europe
for a while as we drank some more. It was pitch black by now
Hey
because there are no street
Arnold, what
lights
are you
in the area.
doing? That guy?
We saw a car coming down the road, which was no big deal.
Oscar.
We sneak out pretty often, and we've never had any real problems. Cars usually just drive by. This time was different. The car spun around in the road and pulled up right next to us on the street, and two guys got out. We ditched the beers, got up, and sprinted down the street. Jake and I hid behind an RV,
Jake
while
got
Sam
shot
hopped a fence.
immediately.
The two men looked dirty, like they hadn't showered in days.
Like it's like
We
post-apocalyptic.
watched the two guys
zombie
for a little
movie.
while, which is when we noticed that one of them had a gun in his hand.
Why would they just
They
fucking
looked in
do
our
that?
direction for a few
Seriously,
minutes
why would he have
before
a
they got
duster
back
on?
into their car and drove off. Jake and I looked for Sam, but we couldn't find him,
He's dead.
so we decided to head back home. We thought
We
we had
never
lost
saw
them,
him again.
but on the way back we turned a corner, and those same guys were sitting in the car, waiting there. We ran through the alleyways and backyards until we lost them. Every few minutes, we saw the car driving slowly down a street
Llama
or alleyway
Cafe.
in the distance, and we would hide. Eventually, we made it back, and Sam messaged to tell us that he got followed by a different car, but he made it home safe.
Yo,
It's been almost
I don't
a
know
year
if it's really
since
him.
that night. We're always more cautious when we go out, and Sam still has nightmares.
Yeah, but who the
about
fuck
being
is wearing a
abducted.
duster? I don't think
I
I've
don't know
ever
for
seen
sure
a
if
human.
the guy from the bathroom had anything to
Not
do
that I
with it.
see any other
We
people, but
believe
like,
that he's somehow
I don't think I've ever
connected
seen
to
anyone
it.
wearing a duster in real life. Who the hell's rocking dusters? Wow, wow.
There is this horrifying creature that lives on a tiny uninhabited island in the southwestern Pacific that lives
Oh,
underground, and at night it will come out and it will eat anything from coconuts to fish to birds to pigs.
Yo, this I love this song.
People. And in today's top story, we're going to learn about someone that accidentally wound up on this island, totally stranded, and came face to face with this nightmarish creature. But before I get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the
I don't
strange,
believe
dark,
anyone
and
in chat.
mysterious delivered in story
There's like
format, then you come to the
10
right
people
channel
like,
because
"Oh,
that's
yo,
all we do, and we
I used
upload
to wear
3,
one."
4, even 5 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, on the next cold day, sneak behind the like button and slap their ears.
It was like,
and then
yo,
run
my
away.
dad
Also,
died in
please
one.
subscribe to this
He has
channel
to
and
be
turn on
buried
all
in it.
notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories.
Like, all right, well, whatever. Apparently, everyone's got a fucking duster then.
Dr. Guy Garman, also known as Doc Deep, was an avid scuba diver, and in 2015, he decided he was going to put his scuba diving to the test and try to break the world record for the deepest recreational scuba dive. At the time, the current record was 1,090 feet, set by a man named Ahmed Gaber in 2014. Guy's plan was to go down to 1,090 feet and then keep going to 1,200 feet, and that would be his record.
It sounds like it could be
But in
a
order
couple
to do
things.
that, you need a dive site that goes down.
Could be a
to
comic book
1,200
villain
feet.
name.
But luckily, Guy did most of his scuba
be
diving
someone's
off the
porno
coast of
name.
St. Croix in the Caribbean, and that area was known for an
The name of a
incredibly
band.
deep dive spot. Now, when most people think of scuba diving in the Caribbean, they think of beautiful clear water
I'll turn this
and
down a little.
amazing coral reef and exotic fishes, and everyone's so happy and it's so great and the water's so warm. And off St. Croix, that was true. But if you continued going offshore about 250 feet, you'd reach a drop-off that's known as the wall. And we're not talking about a gradual drop-off. We're talking about the seafloor going from flat to turning 45
Definitely somebody's
degrees
Twitch
and going
name.
straight down 2
Dr.
miles
Deep
into a complete
underscore
black
TTTV.
abyss. Now, the only people that are actually allowed to dive into the wall
I think he
are
killed me in
very
Tarkov.
experienced scuba divers with all the certifications. But if you're a tourist and you come to St. Croix, you can still scuba dive off the coast, where it is beautiful and shallow and warm and there's reefs and fish, but you're allowed to swim out to the edge of the wall. And people report getting out there and standing on the edge of this cliff, looking in the water with their mask and not being prepared for how intimidating it is. I mean,
is
you're
pretty fucking
standing
cool.
on one
I
side
love
where
that.
behind you is like this tropical paradise, and in front of you is this seemingly endless
Well,
void. where
someone
we don't
remind me to show it after this, but there's the one. You know what? We'll just do it right now. Fuck it. There's like a underwater waterfall. I think we may have even looked at this one other time. Yeah, here it is. What is it called?
The ocean has been
I don't want to watch this video, but this is the only
studied
thing that
less
came up when I looked
intensively
it up.
than the dark side of the moon, covering 70% of
The
the
dark
Earth's
side of
surface.
the
Experts think.
moon.
But did you know that there
Yeah, like
are sand
this.
and
This right here. Underwater falls. Where is that?
illusion? When viewed from above, a runoff of sand and silt deposits creates the impression of an underwater waterfall. But did you know that there are actually real
Can we actually see that? Where is that?
falls?
Underwater
Voted one of the
falls?
most beautiful places on Earth, Mauritius is an island nation in the Indian Ocean. On the south
Underwater falls. All right. Dude, you have to see like what came up when I looked this up. Look at this. Look at these thumbnails. What the fuck? What is this? The fuck is this? What is that thumbnail? It looks like some fucking monster from Resident Evil 8. Like some Final Fantasy 7 shit. All right, now we have to watch that video first. The one with the airplane
The oceans
engine
of the earth hold many
poorly
secrets. Throughout
photoshopped
the history of mankind,
into the
some
fucking
stunning,
rock.
scary, and sometimes simply
What?
inexplicable things have accumulated on the ocean floor. Scientists have discovered ancient cities, cemeteries of sculptures, even those abnormal zones where the laws of physics don't work.
What?
The mysterious and frightening ocean can not only be a peaceful surface that gives
That was just
life,
like a
but
JPEG with like a
also an
wave
enraged
animation on it.
devourer of civilizations. Now, we'll try to figure out the most interesting and mysterious discoveries.
What the
At first
fuck?
glance, the coast and the water surface off the Canary Islands are unremarkable, but that's only at first
What is
glance.
this
because
background
if you
music?
plunge
It's like
underwater,
ska,
you will
fucking
see something
DMCA
really
free music.
amazing. The ocean floor off the Lanzarote Island is strewn with strange statues.
What
Here
the
is a
fuck?
scary crowd of people with empty eyes who are going in an unknown direction. And
What?
near it is a ring several feet in diameter consisting of human bodies. What is it? Traces of a sunken civilization?
Postmodern art?
But if you look closely, you'll see cameras and other contemporary devices in the hands of the statues. There's no mystery here. The statues were created as part of the Atlantic Museum project, and anyone can dive underwater and look at them. But it would be fun to see the faces of archaeologists who stumble upon them in a few centuries. Even today, scientists find underwater
Isn't there a few
statues
things like that?
leave a
Like
lot of
statue of
questions.
Jason
The
in
mysterious
some lake.
underwater city off the northern coast of Egypt is Tranis, or Heraklion as the Greeks had called it. For a long time,
Tranis.
the city was thought to be mythical because it was only mentioned in the chronicles of Greek authors. But
Yeah, look at
suddenly,
this mystery.
This discovery
Let me
was
explain
made
it.
in 2012 at a depth of 164 feet or 50
I guess
meters
it's like a-
near Abu Qir Bay. It has been hidden underwater for 1,200 years. Scientists have yet to unveil all of its secrets. Here, under the water surface, mysterious statues of Isis, the goddess, as well as of other deities,
What are they
rest.
doing?
Temples, granite columns of a royal palace with Egyptian and Greek inscriptions, sphinxes, fragments of Egyptian ships, gold, and many other amazing artifacts lie at the bottom of the sea. They are preserved almost intact. The underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudio also discovered a
Gaudio.
6-foot or 2
A sick
meter
name.
sized black granite slab on which the name of the city was carved, Heraklion. But according to the archaeologist, an infinite number of artifacts are still hidden in
He
these
snagged
waters,
it.
and it'll take at least
Job.
200 years to study all of them. The
Damn.
reason of the death of Heraklion remains a mystery. Why did it end up at the bottom of the sea?
The death of
Some
Heraklion?
scientists blame an earthquake, others a tsunami. The story of Heraklion resembles the legend of Atlantis. Perhaps the latter also existed and is just waiting for someone to discover it, but some historians claim that Atlantis never existed. After all, sailors saw many fantastic things and often embellished their stories. That's how legends start.
Are these
A
sailors?
good example of this are the
What the
glowing
fuck was
patches
that?
in the ocean.
What
In
does that
Asia,
be
they
real?
were called Buddha's wheels, and in Europe, Satan's carousel. In 1879, sailors of the British warship Hawke observed an unusual phenomenon in the Persian Gulf, which the captain
Hawke.
made a record of in the logbook. He described two huge circles. They rotated in opposite directions at a speed of about 80 miles per hour or 130 kilometers per hour. But the Admiralty did not take Captain
Infinite
Evans'
artifacts.
message seriously, and they should have. Subsequently, many ships witnessed similar mysterious spirals in different parts of the world. Sailors describe this phenomenon as one or more revolving circles with an average diameter of 550 yards or 500 meters. Another encounter took place in 1902 in the Gulf of Guinea. The ship's crew noticed two bright circles that went underwater as soon as the ship approached. The sailors
that really
recalled
that
at the
crazy?
moment of approach, the rays seemed to shine through everything around. What was it? Some kind of alien scanners? X-ray radiation? Similar
Alien
incidents took place
scanners.
several more times. In 1962, British sailors on a ship named Telemachus watched as the circles gradually faded away, slowing down their rotation speed until they
Alien
completely
circles.
disappeared underwater. Scientists have racked their brains over this riddle for a long time, but haven't found any answer yet.
some good B-reel.
According to one of the most reliable theories, this may occur due to an accumulation of luminescent plankton. These microorganisms gather in colossal clusters, and the sailor's imagination does the rest. Other researchers associate the glow with the strange circles at the bottom of the
Just some
Persian
guy
Gulf,
riding
the
with,
place
like, a
where
fucking
eerie
feather bed.
luminous spirals were first discovered. UFOlogists, in turn, present this story as another proof of the existence of extraterrestrial civilizations
Hell
that observe
yeah,
us
there
from
they
the bottom
come.
of the ocean. Speaking of UFOs, the Baltic Anomaly is something really worth mentioning. The story began in 2015 after two Swedish oceanographers, Peter Lindberg and Dennis Asberg, discovered a strange object in the Baltic
I
Sea.
hate this one
It
so
lay at a
much.
depth of 279 feet or 85 meters.
It's a
Their
spaceship!
sonar unexpectedly detected an object of irregular shape almost 200 feet or 61 meters long. The find really looked like the famous spaceship Millennium Falcon from
It's
the
the
Star Wars
Millennium
movie.
Falcon.
The subject sparked interest in the scientific community, and experts immediately began to pull up on location. The discoverers themselves offered many explanations for their finds. According to them, it can be a geological object or a secret project of the Third Reich aimed to fight against the English and Soviet submarines, or even
my
an
God.
alien object. Or is it really a brilliant marketing campaign for the release of a new Star Wars
Oh my
movie?
God.
Behind this thing, a long groove is clearly visible.
not
as
what
if
it looks
from an
like.
emergency landing. But here, the weird stuff was just beginning. Scuba divers immediately
fucking
made
rock.
attempts to explore the unique object. But in a strange fashion, every expedition had a failure of all equipment when it approached closer than 656 feet or 200 meters. In
Could've
the
just said
same miraculous
666
way,
feet.
it began working again as soon as they backed up to the same distance. The research of the material was also a puzzle for the scientists.
Just fucking
The
go all the
sample
way
turned
with
out
it.
to be a piece of basalt with traces of burnt organics. It seems that the object had been exposed to high temperatures, for example, as if passing through the atmosphere. According to experts, such materials are more likely to be found in construction or in the wreck of a ship rather than in a geological process. But there are more skeptical scientists. Such is Volker Brucker.
It's just funny when
professor of
anyone
geology
finds
at the
anything
University of
underwater,
Stockholm.
like a
He
rock
considers the
formation that
find to
looks
be a
like
trace of an ancient glacier's
slightly-
activity. Anyway, it's unlikely that we'll find out the truth anytime soon, if ever
Like
at all.
man-made.
Shortly after the start of research, the
Immediately,
project
like,
was suspended, allegedly due to a lack
80
of
million
funding.
conspiracies.
Maybe the world government became interested in the object and wanted to quickly hide the truth.
I'm pretty sure this one has
Another
already been,
mysterious
like,
underwater
proven
find
wrong
is
a million
the
times.
megaliths off the island of Yonaguni. The island is
Yonaguni.
located in splendid
Oh,
isolation.
no,
at a
it's
distance of
another one.
77 miles or 125
This one's the
kilometers
same
from the
exact
rest of the
thing.
islands, and closes the Ryukyu archipelago. In 1985, scuba divers, led by diving instructor Kiyatiru Aratake, were diving near the southern border of the island when
Hey, why
they
are we
saw
watching this
something
one?
incredible.
Was it about the
megalith
underwater
was
waterfalls?
A series of ancient formations of regular shapes. It looked like an ancient find was named after Kimura from the University Settlement up here on the zone.
It was
located.
not
Storms
anything.
often occurred on a to the underwater UFO airfield down on the ocean floor. But despite the fact that all these legends are
No. I hate that one. Especially because they've been like, no, it's not what it is. All right, back to that real shit, though. What are they doing? I want to see the underwater waterfall. That does look pretty fucking insane, though. Underwater. But like the sand is coming out of like the inner part. Can't really see it from there though. It's fucking crazy. I thought they were gonna go underwater.
Underwater waterfall in Mauritius Island. Baffling the most well-traveled of our world.
Why is it
This
AI?
captivating phenomenon happens in the Indian Ocean. Fall. Just to be clear, the phenomenon takes place in the turquoise lagoon. Thanks to the crystal clear water, it's possible to see through it.
It's
being
possible
the
to
key
see through it.
unraveling the mystery.
Why is there nothing of the underwater part? Yeah.
Misleadingly, it isn't the water which is actually falling into the unknown, but rather the sand and silt sediments which are in perpetual movement.
Yeah,
Mauritius.
obviously. What? Hmm. Yeah, I don't see anything.
That's right.
The Weather Channel? That doesn't even exist anymore, does it? Yeah, there's nothing. There's a lot of clickbait though. This one says if you see square waves in the ocean, get out immediately. What? Square waves?
If you see square waves in the ocean, get out of the water immediately.
What?
Help us spread the word about this very important message by clicking that like button.
How are you going to say that when you got this?
Family.
Come on.
Also, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss our future videos. Most of our planet is covered by water. The oceans are so vast that much of the ocean has never even been explored.
It wasn't even like toasted bread.
The
It was just
oceans
like
have gone so
normal bread.
unexplored, scientists and other researchers are still discovering new species of sea life even today. Under the water, you can find shipwrecks and underwater graveyards for airplanes.
Yeah.
There are some things about the ocean that we do know, other things that...
Why is this an emergency?
The ocean around the Isle of Ré in France is very unique. What the ocean does at times can be amazing, but if you see square waves in the ocean, get out of the water immediately.
Why?
Getting out of the water before the waves begin to form this pattern could save your life. The Isle is a popular tourist spot due to its blue oceans, sandy beaches, and the amazing lighthouses. The island is 3 miles wide, 19 miles long. What brings many of the tourists to the area is the pattern that the waves around the ocean makes. The waves are unlike any other. Most waves come in towards the shore in a horizontal fashion, and that's not the case with waves near this island. They actually create a chessboard-like pattern on the surface.
What?
If you look at the waves from above, it looks as though there is a metal grid underneath the water. The square waves are not a result of anything under the water. They're actually a result of the way that the water is moving. When you climb to the top of the lighthouse, you can get an amazing view of this. The reason why this occurs is due to the intersection of two seas located
But why is
near
it
the island.
dangerous?
It's known as a cross sea. A certain
Cross
weather
sea?
pattern around the sea causes the waves to form this way. While the waves may look amazing, you do not want to be in the water when they form this shape. It's because the riptide is extremely powerful when this happens. The riptides that create this wave pattern are nothing like anything you've ever seen
Oh my
before.
god, these
You don't
reaction
hear about
pictures.
people being dragged out to sea in these riptides because the locals know how dangerous it can be to get in the water when the waves form this shape. The locals know enough to steer clear. Many of the tourists who have come to see the waves, they've heard about the dangers and they know enough to stay out of the water as well while the waves are behaving this way. There have been people who have gone out into the ocean when the waves created this, and fortunately they managed to get out of the water safely. One man was photographed swimming in the middle of one of the squares. What makes these chessboard waves so amazing is that this is the only place in
One
the
man
world
was
where you
photographed
can see
swimming
this
in
phenomenon.
between one of the
There are
squares.
millions of small islands all over the world. None of them create waves like these. Fortunately, the waves in this area don't always flow this way. Most of the time, the waters are very safe. The cross-sea occurs during certain types of weather, so the ocean can be safe for swimming.
Yeah, they're all just
most of the
business
time.
casual.
If you're planning
Maybe
to
they
visit
shouldn't
to
go in the
enjoy
water.
this gorgeous beach, just make sure you check the weather forecast first. These waves are just another example of how amazing Mother Nature can be at times. Sure, Mother Nature can be harsh when it comes to natural disasters. Hurricanes, tsunamis, tornadoes, blizzards, and thunder and lightning, it's all been responsible for total devastation time and time again. As severe as nature can be at times, it can also be wondrous.
This lady.
These waves are a perfect example of that. When looking from above, they are an amazing sight. If you're in the water, though, it is another matter altogether. It's amazing how something so beautiful can be so dangerous and cause so much devastation at the same time. However, that's not uncommon when it comes to Mother Nature. If you're
Mother
planning to take
Nature.
a trip to France, you should make it a point to visit this isle. If you're lucky, you might just have a chance to see this natural phenomenon in person.
Make
It
sure
looks
you visit this
incredible in
aisle.
photos, but in person,
Yeah, why was it dangerous? I'm not sure I understand. I don't get it. Why was it dangerous?
Know what's down there. I mean, we've only explored 10% of the ocean.
All right, back to
These
the other
deep
video.
portions of the ocean we can't get down, so we don't know what's down there. What we do know is that sometimes whales will dive down into these deeper sections of the water, and scientists will be tracking their dive, and when they come up again, after only going down maybe 1,000 or 2,000 feet, they'll return with these massive bites taken out of them, because apparently there are creatures down there that we haven't discovered yet that are so big and so aggressive that a whale seems like a reasonable thing to go after for food. And so imagine standing on the edge of this cliff looking out and being like, what's down there? Well, our boy Guy decides, I'm gonna find out what's down there, and I'm gonna do my record-setting dive at the wall. And so
Always
after
a bigger
meticulous
fish.
planning and hiring a support team that's gonna be there to help him do this dive, he, his wife, and his son fly to St. Croix and they get ready to do this dive. Guy had arranged for a line to be lowered right at the edge of the wall that was weighted down by an anchor that was gonna go down all the way to 1,300 feet. And they would put a metal placard at the 1,200-foot mark on the actual line so that when Guy went down, he would reach that placard at 1,200 feet. That's the record-setting mark. He would use a grease pen to mark the placard to indicate, I made it, this is legitimate, and then he would go back up, and that's how the dive was gonna go. And so in the early morning of August 15th, 2015, Guy, along with his big support team, they head out to the edge of the wall. Guy gets into the water along with his son, who's gonna go down with him for the first 200 feet, and he looks up at the support boat and he gives him the okay. He's ready to start the dive, and then he and his son give the signal, they're ready to go down, and they start their descent into the void. As they're sinking lower and lower and lower in the water column, it's getting darker and darker until it's completely and totally pitch black. They reach the 200-foot mark, they come to a stop as was planned, and Guy's son Kip would give his father a squeeze for good luck because they can't communicate, and then Kip would go back up, and Guy, on his own, continues down to the 1,200-foot mark. Once Guy was on his own,
I don't know.
a
If there's
timer
anything really
started
too
because it's
crazy
very
down there,
important
though,
to
you would
track how
think
long he's down
one
in
would have saw
depth.
it.
And his team was expecting him to be back up at the 350-foot mark in 38 minutes from when his son left. But 38 minutes came and went, and he was not at the 350-foot mark. But even though this is a big problem, Guy had a whole bunch of extra air canisters with him, and so if he ran into any sort of problem, he would be able to continue to breathe air and fix the problem before coming up. It would just mean longer decompression stops along the way up. And since he was tethered to the guideline, they knew he couldn't drift away. And so they just had to wait and hope that he ran into some problem and that he would fix it eventually.
You know this is obviously going to end in some awful way.
They couldn't really send a rescue mission down to get him because Guy was going so deep. He was the only one that was able to get down there. No one else was qualified or would be able to do it or had the right equipment for it. He was totally on his own down there. It would take 3 days before they were able to get the right equipment that was able to pull this lineup out of the water, and attached at the end of it was Guy, and he was deceased. He had drowned. But the really scary thing about what happened to Guy is when he went down into that abyss, he had all these extra air canisters attached to him. And so presumably he went down the line, probably all the way down to the record-breaking mark, and then he got trapped somehow. And as he's trapped on this line in total
Did he use up all the air?
Surrounded by
I don't
who
understand.
knows what down there, probably for several hours, he just cycled through his backup air canisters wondering, am I gonna run out of air and drown? Or am I gonna get attacked by some animal down here? There is this tiny little stream that winds its way through a forest in Yorkshire, England called the Bolton Strid. It's not very wide, you could jump over it. It doesn't appear to be very deep, it looks like maybe a foot or two, and it's not moving very fast, but that's all an illusion. There are signs up all over the place that say do not go near the Bolton Strid. It kills
Fuck that.
people. Because
The
just
Strid
beneath the
sounds like a
surface
bad
of this
place.
seemingly tame water body is a natural booby trap that has a 100% mortality rate, meaning every single person that has ever stepped foot in the Bolton Strid has died. In 1998, Barry and Lynn Colletwer were walking along the Bolton Strid on their second day of their honeymoon, and all of a sudden a torrential downpour starts just raining down on them, and the rocks they were on suddenly got pretty slick, and Lynn slips and falls into the Strid. Barry, being a good husband, runs over to try to save her, and he too falls into the Strid. A man named Desmond Thomas was on the other side of the Strid, and he saw Barry as he was running for his wife, and he saw him fall in, and he watched Barry's face as he was looking at him as if he was going to stay afloat at the top. Desmond said it looked like someone came up and grabbed his leg and yanked him under the water, and he didn't
What
see
the
anything.
fuck?
Lynn's body was found 6 days later in West Yorkshire, and Barry's body was found over a month later, 10 miles downstream. In another case,
What
in
the
2010,
fuck? That's
an
so
8-year-old
fucking
boy
scary.
named Aaron Page was playing by the Bolton Strid for his birthday. There's an area that's totally safe, that's away from the Strid, where people have picnics and that kind of thing. And he came down to the edge of the Strid and was running on the rocks, and he slipped and he fell in. Now, an adult saw this happen and they ran over and they were able to grab onto him while he's in the water. But the pull from inside the water was so strong that this person couldn't hold on to this child, who was eventually sucked under and dragged away.
That's
drowned.
insane.
And beyond these two reports, there's dozens of others of people trying to jump over the Strid and falling in and drowning. So why is the Bolton Strid so deadly? If you look at this picture, this is of the River Wharf, and it's just a little ways upstream of the Bolton Strid. And all this water in the River Wharf gets funneled into the Bolton Strid. And the way it fits through that narrow section that is the Bolton Strid is the river turns on its side. So when you're looking at the Bolton Strid and you think,
What?
oh, that's not that deep. Well, it is that deep. It's at least as deep as the River Wharf is wide. And if you look at it on the surface and you say, oh, well, the Bolton Strid's not moving very fast. Well, that's because underneath the surface there is a whipping current. And in fact, the current that runs through the Strid is so strong that if you were standing on one of the rocks overlooking the water, you're looking down into the Bolton Strid, well, you're not really standing on solid rock. You're kind of standing on a ledge. You just don't know it because the water meets the edge of the ledge. Underneath the rock you're standing on,
it's like all
the
hollowed
water
out.
has completely carved it out. So if you were to fall in, before you get sucked under the water, you would get sucked against
Seems
the
like they should do,
side
like,
and you would
hydroelectricity with it or
disappear
something
under one
like
of
that.
those shelves and go way far back underneath these rocks. And then you'd get sucked under and drown. And a lot of people who fall into the Strid, they don't make it out the other side. They don't get downstream. They get pulled into all these different caverns and tunnels that have been carved out by that current, and they're trapped in there forever because no one's going in to retrieve them.
That's
Not
so
even with
fucked up.
scuba
Yeah,
gear.
no one can go
Because
in.
If you get in there with scuba gear, the current will push you into these different caves and you aren't getting out again. On June 1st, 1937, Amelia Earhart took off from Oakland, California on an eastbound flight around the world. It was her second attempt to become the first pilot ever to circumnavigate the globe. She, along with her flight navigator Fred Noonan, flew to Miami and then down to South America, across the Atlantic to Africa, and then east to India and Southeast Asia. The pair reached Lae, New Guinea on June 29th. A couple days later, on July 2nd, Earhart and Noonan would depart Lae, and they would make their way to tiny Howland Island, which was their next refueling stop, but they would never arrive. What Earhart was trying to accomplish at the time was such a big deal, and so when they disappeared, it was heartbreaking, and it made international headlines, and this huge search was launched for them, but they can't find them, and after 2 weeks, they officially declared they were lost at sea and most likely dead. 3 years later, and 350 miles away from
I've heard this
Howland
story
Island,
before.
which was the island Earhart and Noonan were trying to get to before they vanished, a British scientist was on this tiny little uninhabited island called Niku Maroro, and they made a startling discovery. He found an incomplete skeleton next to what looked like the remains of a campfire, and their skeleton was kind of torn all over the place, like they had been ripped limb from limb. Because of Niku Maroro's proximity to Howland Island, everybody speculated that this has got to be the body of either Amelia Earhart or Noonan. The bones were sent to 2 doctors in Fiji, and they unfortunately said, no, this isn't Earhart or Noonan, this is somebody else. So those bones were ultimately disposed of because no one could claim them or knew who they were, and everybody just kind of forgot about it until 2017, when a forensic anthropologist decided to manually re-examine the measurements of the bones that were taken off of Niku Maroro Island and compare them to real measurements of Amelia Earhart. And they discovered that clearly those doctors in Fiji had made a mistake, because the measurements of these bones match Amelia Earhart almost exactly. So researchers go back to Niku Maroro Island, and they go to the area where these bones were found near that campfire, and they look around and they find a couple 1930s era bottles, glass bottles, and one of them is a freckle cream, and Amelia Earhart had lots of freckles.
Yeah, I still think it could be like anybody, though.
Cover them up. She was kind of famous for doing that. And so they found that freckle cream on this island near bones that look like they belong to Amelia Earhart. So while some
I didn't even know that
scientists are putting their
existed.
energy
Freckle
into
cream?
confirming
What the fuck?
that, yes,
I guess it's
those
just makeup.
bones were Amelia Earhart. We don't have the bones, but we can show you with the measurements and the freckle cream. And there's another picture that apparently shows the landing gear of her plane off of Niku Maroro Island. So there's some people that are working on that angle. And there's another group of scientists and researchers that are saying, okay, let's assume that that really was Amelia Earhart. Let's figure out what happened to her once she got to Niku Maroro Island. And the leading theory is horrifying. Although Niku Maroro Island is uninhabited by people, it is inhabited by one of the scariest creatures on the planet, the coconut crab. They're 3 feet long, they can carry at least 6 times their body weight, and they use their pincers that are as strong as a lion's jaw to rip open coconuts, which is their main source of food. But coconuts are not the only thing they eat. They'll also eat pigs, they'll eat each other, they'll even eat themselves.
Yeah, fuck that.
And they're prolific climbers
Fuck
because
that.
they need to get up to get to the coconuts. But in some parts of the world, they use their climbing ability to climb up and grab birds and break their wings with their pincers and then drag them into their underground burrows where they will eat them too. The few researchers and scientists that have gone out to Niku Maroro Island have said at night, thousands of these crabs will emerge from their underground burrows and they'll go looking for food. And they have a really keen sense of smell, and they can smell blood. So when one of the crabs goes up and grabs a bird and starts ripping it apart, the thousands of others will come charging over and swarm the bird because they've smelled the blood, and they'll rip it to pieces, and they'll all try to get in on the action. And so the theory
That
goes,
is fucking
Earhart and
scary.
Noonan are making their
They're
way to
fucking
Howland
berserkers.
Island. They get off track somehow, and they wind up crash landing 350 miles away on Niku Maroro Island on one of the reefs. Noonan probably dies on impact, and Earhart, who's badly wounded and probably bleeding, she gets onto the island and she makes her way up to that area where that campfire was found. And for some amount of time, Earhart is able to survive off of whatever she had on her in those glass bottles.
Remember that book cover of the
But
guy
in her weakened
getting
state
eaten by
and
crabs?
bleeding, at some point, she probably attracted the coconut crabs, who one night came out and swarmed her, ripped her to pieces, and ate her. Today, Niku Maroro Island is only inhabited by the coconut crabs, and it's protected land under the Republic of Kiribati. And so if you want to go, you have to get express permission from the Republic of Kiribati, and they send someone to go with you. And there's no airport on the island, so you have to land on a separate island and then ride to Niku Maroro on a boat, but you have to pass through Cyclone Alley, which means you can only travel there at certain parts of the year, and even then it's incredibly dangerous. So that's going to do it, guys. I hope you enjoyed
like
today's stories.
ass.
Let me know in the comments what you thought of them, and I will pin the best comment at the top of the comments.
Sounds like a pain in the fucking ass. I don't know. I don't think it's 100% that that was definitely Amelia Earhart, though. I feel like they'll never 100% know. I don't know. Looking for something. Looking for a little something something. You know who we should put on for a minute? Oh my god, just boobs.
What are you afraid of? From shadow people to demon stalkers, these top 10 scary videos will even scare the devil. Number 10,
scare the
Genevieve's
devil.
Monster. You always want your children to have friends, but phantom friends are probably not your preference. Posted to TikTok by Genevieve's Monster and reported on by The Sun.
Just
This
the kids.
TikToker heard her daughter Marley having a play date in an empty home.
Like
When
another
she calls
kid.
Marley
Fuck
into the
that.
room, a mysterious shadow figure crossed the hallway before her daughter entered.
Lorelei, come here.
Oh my.
Lorelei, who are you playing?
All right, next video.
Shadows. Next time you think you're alone dancing, make sure you're not secretly being watched by a scary audience of one.
A scary
Published by J.
audience
Much
of
in September of
one.
2021, a young woman is dancing to a song for a video when something unexpected enters the frame. Watch closely in the darkness of the closet behind her. A scary figure with a
I do
black hood
not
and
see
pale face
anything.
is peering out at her right over her shoulder. The figure doesn't move and is obscured by darkness, but is suggested to be a demon or a ghost.
What?
Do you think that's really what this mysterious object is?
No.
Or could it simply be something in the closet caught at just the right angle? Number 8. The real shape of the Jinn. A Jinn is a supernatural
Jinn.
creature appearing in mythology. They are not completely good or evil, but are mentioned alongside devils as the cause of possession and misfortune. Published by Deranged Sajib in April of 2021. This Jinn certainly looks like it leans evil. The Jinn appears to have a grayish face and indistinct features. It is seen here sitting on the ground reading something, or maybe it's playing on its phone. Later, the Jinn is captured holding what looks like an arm bone and casting a spell. The spell seems to shoot something at the shelter the men are hidden in. Rock crumbles around them.
رميت الحجر ايه لا 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 بسم الله.
In the
Is that
end,
real
the
magic?
creepy Jinn is captured up close as the cameraman rounds a corner. The scary figure appears to have a long beard, although he's seen in a flash, so his features are indistinct. After seeing this footage, what do you think? Is
Magic
this
is
Jinn
real?
good or evil? My guess is definitely evil. Number 7. Unspeakable Ghostbusters. When you're dressed up like Ghostbusters,
What?
you'll inevitably bust some ghosts. Published in September of 2020, the
What?
Unspeakable crew is after some paranormal action in this haunted home. The crew is first wandering through a
The
crawl
real
space with
Ghostbusters.
insulation overhead when they hear distinct footsteps and a knocking sound.
Stop. It was literally like no joke.
It's 3 a.m. After clearing the bathroom, apart from a cockroach, they are heading down the stairs when a door slams shut somewhere
Wait,
in the
stop.
home.
Why would there be anyone up here?
Yo, it's super hot up here, bro. Yo, why is the carpet green? It's not carpet, bro.
What was it? No, that did not just happen.
Nah, bro. Nah.
Moments later, they hear footsteps again, a loud thump, and other random noises.
It is weird up here.
Yo, wait. Shh. Yo, is that footsteps? Bro, there's nothing above us.
The crew offers the unseen stalker Chipotle as a peace offering.
I got Chipotle! Yo, this is not a joke. Hello?
Unspeakable says there's something in the wall, and they later notice that it's a full moon outside. Not long after, Unspeakable claims he saw something move in the corner, and James climbs out of the window to see if there are ghosts on the roof.
Whoa, bruh, no lie, I just saw something like move. Like, I'm not even messing with you. Like, no, like legit. I don't know if it was a shadow, but like there was no light over there. I'm like 100% legit.
Though they didn't find the ghost there, a security camera set up in an empty room does catch some suspicious activity later as the window shutter opens on its own. Did these Ghostbusters find what they were looking for, or is this old abandoned building just full of drafts?
He's just
and
carrying around an extension cord with
noises?
him.
Number 6, the laughing woman. Ghosts in South Korea apparently have some creepy cackles. Published to YouTube by Yoon Sae-woon, this ghost hunter explores haunted places in Korea, and this one does not disappoint. Yoon Sae-woon places a security camera in a dark room of this abandoned place and sets up a music box that plays when it detects movement ahead. After a while of sitting in silence, this creepy melody plays. There's something
Why does that
in
sound
the
familiar?
room. While using an EMF meter, the device is triggered, suggesting there is indeed a body nearby. He later hears a cackling sound that's like a woman laughing. The giggle sounds like it's coming from right outside the door. Yoon says he's scared and keeps asking who it is. Does he really want to find out?
Who is it?
He hears a beep that sounds like it's coming from behind him, and then the laughter again. He mimics the laugh, but
Giggle.
whoever is giggling does not back down. Another of Yoon's devices goes off, and then the laughter is triggered again. Yoon says it's a bird, but notes that he wants to leave because he can't be afraid any longer. Before leaving, Yoon pulls up the scary snow face recognition selfie app, which places stickers on faces it recognizes. When the face in question opens its mouth, a sound effect plays as Yoon scans the darkened room. This happens.
And people do this and they're like, yo, there's a ghost there. It's like, no.
The final scare sent him out the door, never to return to this haunted hollow. After these events, I completely understand. Number 5, Shaman's Ritual. Never forget a single step in a shaman's ritual. Published by D-Dog Michael in September of 2021.
Well, it's the fact that it's supposed to be a
paranormal
recognizing
investigation is
like
off to a
someone's
scary
face.
start,
That's why
and
it's
the
supposed to be
shaman's
scary.
advice to safeguard you includes
Not
not
'cause of the
touching
clown
the
face.
spirit's things. Seems like a recipe for disaster.
That's like, oh, yo, they
After
recognize the
doing as
ghosts
the
out
shaman
there.
said,
It's like, no, it
Michael
didn't. It just,
waits.
like,
He then
fucking popped.
enters the haunted home. On one wall is this strange white tiger. In the room, a bell tinkles. Then something on the table moves on its own.
Oh, no.
At one point, a sound is heard, which Michael notes was heard during the live episode but cannot be heard during the recording. A little later, when Michael
That
is in
room
a
just
creepy
looks
room
fucking
of
scary. Fuck
statues,
that.
one of these statues moves.
Looks like it was like made to move almost.
It turns abruptly
not.
to the left, While observing another group of statues, a large knife flips around in a bucket.
Why is there a bucket of knives?
As he continues around the haunted home, he hears a spirit's voice that sounds like a child talking.
Looks like a store or something. Is it a store? The fuck did he say it was?
Shortly after, he hears a deep voice whispering. When Michael finally leaves, he forgets something. According to the shaman, he was supposed to spill half of the drink on the way out. He didn't do it. What's going to happen to Michael? I'm worried. It's nothing good. Lesson learned. Always follow the shaman's advice to the letter. Number 4, Krassu Ghost. Southeast Asian countries share a belief in Krassu, a ghost whose origin is unknown. Thai legend tells of a cursed woman who, in her lifetime, was sinful and devious.
Yeah, you know they're tight
such a life.
when they got a matching fucking
she comes
YouTube
back as a putti, which survives on rotten, uncooked food. The Krassu's form is a creepy floating head that hovers surrounded
they have some really
by a
scary ghosts
glow.
here.
The glow is said to be produced by the methane found in the marshes in which the Krassu lives. Organs trail below the head, including the stomach, intestine, and heart. 3 men pursue the Krassu in their video, published in July of 2021. In the scary video, they encounter something that literally makes them nauseous.
What? Dead body?
Could it be the spoiled food upon which the Krassu...
I don't want to just watch him puking.
The light glows green as they crouch down to watch from a distance.
Oh my god, isn't it night vision?
Is this the Krassu ghost of legend? No organs are seen trailing past a floating head, but if not the Krassu, what is this? I can't think of any other explanation. Number 3, Mount Morris Mystery House. A child ghost might be haunting the Mount Morris Mystery House. Published in February of 2021 by Spirit Walk Paranormal, this haunting video explores the house in question, inspiring more mysteries than it solves. As the team investigates, they become curious about this curtain in the home. They look at it closely, with one of the team pulling it forward and capturing video inside. Nothing is there, but look at what happens below as the female ghost hunter takes a step away.
What?
It seems like something small, about waist high, is pushing on the curtain. Later, as they continue their investigation, some harsh breathing is heard.
Flatline. Immediately. Like...
Although the team registers the phrase, "I like you," I'm not hearing that, but there's definitely a strange voice or huffing sound there. Not long after, they're registering something on one of their devices when you hear a rhythmic tapping in the background.
0.5. I heard that too.
Is the scary child spirit closer than we think? Several unexplained thudding noises are later heard as they attempt to communicate with the spirits in Mount Morris. And later, when they're in the attic, this strange sound is heard.
The strange sound.
Again, the team seems to hear a disembodied voice in this noise, but it doesn't register like a voice, just another unexplained sound, which to me seems scary enough in an empty house, and the mystery remains. Number 2, dark web coordinates. Would you ever have the stomach to follow some random coordinates that you discovered on the dark web? That's what Paranoiacs did, and they published their findings in January of 2021. According to the team, they were sent an email from someone in the ethers of the dark web with mysterious coordinates. Following these coordinates, they find themselves marching through a snowdrift. They come across two mysterious yellow spots in the snow.
Oh my God.
On, they arrive at an old abandoned wooden structure. A package is on the ground. Opening it, they discover what appears to be gloves and a rock.
Yeah, we found some yellow snow. It must mean there's a treasure hidden here.
In the
Some
meantime,
kind of
they hear a
ghost
noise in the
snow.
dark forest. Wrapped in a piece of plastic, in the box is a note. It reads, "Guess who is my next victim? Watch the videos from the USB." Within the box, they also find a recording device. Playing back the audio, a demonic voice says, "The USB stick is in your car."
My God.
Nee. The USB stick on your camera?
There is also a child
What's he
crying on
saying?
the recording,
Can't
which is
tell.
absolutely terrifying.
Who there? Who there, yeah?
He throws it in the box.
When they return to their car, a box has been placed on their windshield with what I presume is a USB inside. The thing is wrapped in plastic. Unfortunately, this is a cliffhanger, and we're left to wonder
Are you kidding
who
me?
this mysterious dark web messenger's next victim is. Although we could probably guess,
It's you,
the answer
Chills.
will scare even the devil. I've got a challenge for you. Since you've made it this far, why not like this video and hit subscribe in the next 5 seconds? Because I upload 4 new scary videos every week. If you're curious about what I look like in real life, then go to my Instagram at DylanIsChillinYT and tap that follow button to find out. Number 1, get out of the pool. Have you ever scared yourself silly imagining something
Find
unexpected
out.
was in the pool with you? Well, maybe it's
Is
not
that-
all in your head.
who is that?
Published by Banana Joe in June of 2016. Joe was home alone with his
Banana
mom
Joe.
and was playing in the pool at night. His mom went to snap a pic when, in a panic, she told him get out of the pool. When he returned to safety inside, he asked to see the photo his mom had taken. She showed him this. A creepy head with glowing eyes is bobbing in the water behind him. Who or what was accompanying Joe for a swim that night? Even the devil doesn't want to know.
Even the
These
devil.
videos are so scary that they simply shouldn't exist. Only the brave.
Only the brave. Good job, you did it. Pretty spooky. Pretty damn spooky. Like who was it? Who was there? Who was it? Midnight office.
Working the night shift always sucked. I work in an office building and would constantly do the night shifts since it was the only time it would work out for me. I was just about always the only person on the floor I worked on, possibly in the whole building. There would always be a kind of eerie feeling to being in such a big building with most of the lights out and absolutely no one around. But on the upside, it was peaceful and less stressful,
This is where
and I was
the
able to get a lot of work
Matrix
done.
takes place.
There was this one night,
Or,
though. It was a Friday night,
Neo works.
around 2 in the morning. I was typing away on my keyboard when I heard a noise from outside my cubicle. It sounded like just a random crack from the walls or something. It's unusual in this building, but I didn't get too concerned about it. I resumed typing away and was once again interrupted by a sound. This time, the sound of a computer starting up.
Yeah, I've watched this one a few times.
It caught me
this
off
one.
guard. I was sure nobody else was working the night shift. I
For
stood
the
up on my chair to
uninitiated.
get a view over the cubicle walls. The glare of a computer screen in the dark was visible in a cubicle on the opposite side of the room. Then I did something stupid, something I regret. I asked if there was anybody there in a yell, hoping to get an answer from a fellow employee.
Good idea.
But instead, I saw the glaring light of the computer monitor across the room turn off, and there was once again nothing but darkness on that side of the room. I started getting nervous. I turned off the lamp and computer screen so that I wouldn't give away my position to whoever that was. I crouched down and tiptoed out across to a nearby
I got ready to
cubicle.
go Super Saiyan.
There was just utter silence. I sat waiting for something to happen for God knows how long, but I eventually decided the coast was clear. I tiptoed down past all the cubicles until I reached the opening near the exit door to the stairs and elevators, and that's when I realized that my fearful suspicion was true. There was a man crouched down behind a plant in the corner of the room, dressed in all black. I felt my heart sink as I noticed him, but it didn't seem like he knew that I noticed him. I turned back to the stairway door.
No.
There was no way I was going to wait for the elevator and take a chance. I casually opened the door and closed it behind me, proceeding to walk down the stairs. After making it down about 2 flights of stairs, I heard the door above me push open aggressively, followed by manic echoing footsteps coming fast down the stairs. I raced down the stairs, running as fast as I could, all while the footsteps above me were getting louder. I finally made it to the first floor, raced through the lobby, and out the front door. Whoever was in there didn't follow me. I immediately
Manic
called the
echoing.
cops, along with one of my bosses. My boss said no one was scheduled to work except for me. The cops scanned the place from top to bottom. There was no one in there. I couldn't help them out with any description other than he was wearing all black.
He just like completely
I
changed.
did continue to do the night shift for about a week after that, with my boss allowing
Never
me to
noticed
lock
that
all
before.
possible entrances to the floor, including the elevators. But I still wasn't comfortable with it, so ever since, I've been doing the day shifts.
So I just started working in daylight instead of working at night in an office building that's fucking empty. I guess. I know we've watched most of these, but some people haven't seen them yet. Some people haven't seen them yet. And they're good. They're funny a second time. No, this one we already watched recently. I just think we've watched a lot of them like really recently. Dun, 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 dun.
In the year 2009, I was spending a weekend with my uncle on his ranch when my parents were renovating the new house we had just bought. It was my second night there, a Saturday, and it happened to be during one of the biggest thunderstorms of the year. I'd say there were at least 3 crashes of
Biggest
thunder and lightning per minute.
thunderstorms.
And we were in the heart of the storm because the thunder would crash not even a second after the lightning would. I always enjoyed listening to storms while laying in bed. So I stayed up a little later watching TV, just enjoying the ambiance. After the movie I was watching finally ended, I turned off the TV and tried to fall asleep. As I heard the lightning strike from outside, I could have sworn I heard some kind of metallic thud coming from outside at the same time. I didn't pay it too much
Metallic
mind.
thud.
20 seconds later,
Yep, same animator. Llama
I
Arts.
could have sworn I heard it again. A very distinct metallic thud coming from outside to match the timing of the lightning. I really don't mean to make
This is
sound
the
like a
fucking
cliche
thing
horror
from
story,
the Shawshank
but
Redemption,
my uncle
isn't
really
it?
is a kind of creepy guy, and I was never close with him. Even
Yeah, this one's a
remotely.
few years after
so for
the
that reason,
last
I didn't
animation.
feel right going to wake him
There you
up.
go.
I just tried
Way
to
better.
forget about it.
It's Andy Dufresne.
Now I was getting concerned. What the hell could that be? After the third time, I finally got out of bed and walked over to the window of the guest bedroom. The water pouring down on the window made it extra hard to see what was out there in the dark fields. A flash of lightning momentarily lit up the property, but I couldn't see anything. However, once again, the sound of a metal hit accompanied
Momentarily.
The sound was so close now, it sounded like it was coming from the left of the window at a blind spot. I was going to do something I knew my uncle wouldn't be happy about. It would be a bit messy, but I was going to open the window and peer outside to see if I could see what the sound was. I unhooked the window lock and slid it up, and immediately the wind of the storm blew drops of rain into the room and onto me. I stuck my head out the window.
My
and
eyes
looked
were
to the
too
left,
big.
and at that very moment, lightning lit up the property once again, and I could see a person dressed in all black crouched down by the outside basement door with his hand raised in the air. And before the sky went dark, I caught the briefest glimpse of what the sound was coming from. The person was bashing at the basement door lock. I pulled my head in and quietly shut the window, making sure to lock it. I was in a panic. I feared he might have seen or heard me. I ran back to bed and pretended to be asleep, facing away from the window. Lightning crashed once again, but this time there was no metallic thud. My heart must have dropped as I realized this.
Why would he get back in
I
bed?
just stayed put in bed for the longest time, hoping whoever was out there would go away. After maybe 3 more lightning crashes without any thuds accompanying them, I thought it would be safe to go tell my uncle.
What?
I turned to face the window and screamed. There was a figure, clear as day, standing at the window, looking in at me. I screamed as loud as I could and ran straight to my uncle's room.
There he is.
He went outside with his hunting rifle with nothing on but his pajamas, not even socks. He ran around the entire property yelling like a madman, but didn't find anyone. The next
Sometimes it
morning,
pays
we
to
were
have a
able
crazy
better see the
cowboy
marks on
uncle.
the basement door lock. It was almost bashed open. Maybe 3 or 4 more good hits would have done it, according to my uncle. He was proud of me for picking up on it. Luckily, I was out of there that same day. My uncle hasn't told us of any incidents since, so I think he's been okay. Not that we talked to him much at all. I'm grateful I stayed up a little later that night watching that movie, because I may have just stopped a robbery, or possibly much worse.
Possibly. Guy breaks in, fucking uncle just shoots him. Another end of the story, I guess. Could just go that way. Hamburglar.
It was during a blizzard in Valley Stream. I was getting paid $250 to watch some couple's kid while they went away for the weekend.
Damn.
His name was Matthew. This took place on the first night, which was a Friday night.
That Matthew or that you?
Matthew was already
Okay.
supposedly asleep, while I was in the living room watching a movie. I got a knock at the door and looked at the clock. It was close to midnight. There was no way I was opening it. Not even 10 seconds later, I heard the sound of 2 or 3 men angrily banging on the door, telling me to open up. I felt like my heart was about to stop. I took a peek through the blinds, and there was somebody standing right on the other side of the window. I fell back in fear, and after managing to get back on my feet, I ran to the kitchen phone first thing to call the police. They said because of the weather, it could take a while for an officer to get here. I was told to take the child and hide somewhere until an officer arrived. They wanted to keep me on the line, but I wasn't thinking clearly in the heat of the moment and hung up. However, it wasn't until I ran through the living room that I realized the banging had stopped. I took a second peek through the living room window. Nobody was there now. I heard the sound of glass shattering from a few rooms over. My knees started to feel weak.
It's like
as I
Goodnight
realized they had
Moon
just
fucking
broken the
house or
window
something.
and were about to climb into the house. I had to run and get Matthew. I couldn't just leave without him. Of course, when I got upstairs, there was no time left to run back
Of course, I
downstairs,
left him there anyway.
as I already heard footsteps and laughter coming from downstairs. I covered Matthew's mouth with my hand as I ran with him into his toy closet. A few minutes dragged on to what felt like half an hour as we sat there in the dark closet. Matthew began to squeal as footsteps on the carpet reached the outside of his bedroom door. There was more than one person. They came inside. There weren't many places to hide in this room. I was actually reflecting on my whole life, so I was sure I was gonna die. We heard the sound of a police siren outside, even from in the closet, and then I heard one of the men in the room mutter, "Aw, shit." I opened the door back up as I heard at least 3 pairs of footsteps hurriedly rushing down the stairs. They didn't get far, as the police later found their footprints in the backyard, leading to our shed. There were 5 men in total, and they were all arrested.
One of them looked like Trunks. They all look like fucking... Oh, that's good. Yeah, like they'd be like, I don't know, I don't even know how to describe it. I like that one. We're in a gang. You see, we're in a gang here. You see?
I recently moved out, and I already have a horror story to tell. The house I moved into isn't anything impressive, it's just a house that's appropriate for 1 or 2 people.
Good night, Moon Mafia.
But I'd say right away, I started hearing weird sounds coming from inside the walls. I first heard it in the kitchen, and then in the bathroom, but on night 3...
Sounds like Hellmarch from
hearing
Command
it
and
in my
Conquer.
bedroom. I was sure there was some kind of animal living in my walls. I just had to figure out how to get rid of it. The next morning, I didn't even have enough milk to fill the bowl of cereal. I couldn't believe I hadn't realized I needed more milk. In fact, I seemed to be eating up all of my food pretty fast. I woke up in the middle of that night to the sound of breathing. Not my breathing. It sounded just like the breathing of a person. I flipped the lamp on and it stopped. I chalked it up as my mind playing tricks on me after waking up. The next day was really hot, so I turned on the AC for the first time. I checked every single vent, and some of them weren't blowing any air, one of them being the vent right next to my bed. I peered through the vent with a flashlight. There wasn't even a duct behind the vent. It was just the inside of the wall. It seemed that whatever air duct was in there had been removed. Unfortunately, I didn't look into the air conditioning system while buying the house, so I didn't know about this. That night, I had to sleep in the heat with no AC, so I was up pretty late, constantly rolling around and flipping the pillow over. Then I eventually started to hear the breathing again, but this time I was fully awake. I knew it was real this time.
Flipping over.
It was coming to my left. I looked to my left at the air vents. The sound was surely coming from in there. I grabbed the flashlight again and shined it in through the vent. I dropped it and screamed. There was someone's face peering through the cracks of the vents. The first thing I saw were their eyes, open wide and glowing. I screamed all the way down and out the house.
Out the house.
I soon found out there was a crazy, dangerous homeless man living in my walls, and he had been eating my food ever since I moved in.
There's the centipede man. What you doing? What's that guy doing? What you doing out there? Hmm. Hmm.
This story is from the point of view of a 16-year-old girl. I used to have a boy living next door to me that was obsessed.
Oh, the audio died.
I would go outside, Joey would come outside as well, as if he were watching me through his
I've seen
windows,
this one
waiting
before.
for me. He was 17 and very weird, and he didn't seem to have any friends, as he was always home. I tried to give every sign possible that I didn't like this guy, but he wouldn't get the message. So I had to finally just tell him one day that I don't like him and to leave me alone. The look on his face that day is something that won't leave me.
No, he's gonna power up.
It was the kind of angry look a toddler gives their parents when they can't have a toy. Coming from a 17-year-old, that's much more disturbing. One night, my parents left me to watch the house. I was working on a school project when I felt my bed shift a little bit. I looked under my bed. I screamed as I saw Joey laying under my bed. I ran away while he tried to crawl out from under my bed. I ran to his house
Joey,
and
what are
rang
you
the bell
doing?
at least 10 times, telling his parents about
Looked like
it
he was,
and
like,
opened the
stuck.
door. Joey never came out of my house, so I called the police. His parents begged me not to, but I ignored them.
Look at the dad.
The
Holy
police found him
shit.
still in my room and arrested him. Apparently, he admitted this wasn't the first time he had hid under my bed. They also found pictures of me scattered across his room. The most disturbing one was of me sleeping, and it was taken from inside my room.
Joey Jojo Shabadoo? Alright, this is the original. This is my favorite one, I think.
I was looking for a car to buy for my son for his 18th birthday. I
Toyota
was
Camry.
searching all the typical car websites, cars.com, eBay Motors. They were all overpriced as expected. Craigslist was the only place to find an actual deal. About a week into my search, I found an 03 Toyota Camry. It had 67,000 miles, no accidents, no damage, and good condition for only $3,500. This seems like a steal for such a reliable car with such low mileage. The seller lived about 10 miles from me, which was a reasonable drive when looking for a car. I gave him a call to set up a time to come check it out. The man sounded normal on the phone. He assured me that there were absolutely no problems with the car. He introduced himself as Bob. I brought along $3,500 in cash, even though I planned on wiggling down the price as much as possible. I pulled up the dirt road to Bob's property about 15 minutes early. It was a tiny little house with a decent-sized property, only because it was a bit far from the nearest neighbors. The garage was open, so I walked over to see if anybody was inside, but except for an unusual amount of car parts, it was empty. The car was nowhere in sight. The only car on the property was an old
Yeah, maybe
pickup
get the
truck.
fuck out of there.
I went over to the front door to check the house numbers. It was the right address. The doorbell button was missing, so I knocked on the front door. I knocked for exactly 5 minutes before deciding to give the man a call. So I dialed his number and I heard the sound of a cell phone ringing from inside the house. I was extremely confused.
Doesn't he look
at this
familiar?
point. Now I knew I had the
Same
right
guy.
house. I didn't understand why, if he was home, why he wasn't answering. I decided I had to take a peek through one of the windows to see if anybody was inside. Peering through the glass, I couldn't really see much as it was pretty dark inside the house. I saw a very old-fashioned dining room set,
These chairs look kind
but
of
across
familiar.
from that, I saw somebody standing at the back door of the house, staring outside. I figured that must have been Bob, so I knocked on the window, but he didn't even move. There was no gate or anything to the backyard. It was just a wide open yard, since this wasn't a rural area. I simply walked around the house to the backyard. I didn't understand how he couldn't hear me. When I got to the
I
back door,
don't
I made a
understand.
shocking realization. The figure standing by the door was a taxidermied human being. I ran straight back the way I came and back to my car. I looked up one last time before driving off. The blinds to the window I had peeked into had been shut, but I could see two of the blinds bent open. Somebody was at that window watching me. You can probably guess I had the gas pedal to the floor the whole way home. The whole situation still makes no sense. All the car parts, the fact that there was no Toyota Camry, the taxidermied human being, the fact that there was no car
No
there leads
Toyota
me to
Camry?
believe that whoever that man wasn't planning on selling me anything. And that also leads to the disturbing thought that I was very close to becoming a lifeless statue staring out that man's back door.
It was me. Truly yours, this is Stan, your number one fan. Just becomes the Eminem song. Please welcome. All right, one more. The pizza guy.
This happened 4 years ago when I was still in high school. I was told to do my last delivery of my shift. I got in my car, which was a 1999 Camry, perfect for delivering pizzas. I GPSed the address on my phone. I live upstate in the country, so all pizza deliveries were long drives. I remember the sun was starting to set, so it was probably around 7 o'clock. I'd say after a good 15 minutes of driving through the foresty dirt roads, my GPS said I had arrived. It was an old little cottage-like house made almost entirely of wood. It was sitting all by itself in the middle of absolutely nothing but forest. The lawn was completely unkept, as the grass was almost at knee height. I was used to this kind of thing, so I didn't think much of it. I took the pizza to the front door. There was no doorbell, so I knocked loudly on the door. Within 10 seconds, I heard the sound of footsteps hitting wood on the inside of the house. The footsteps made it to the door and stopped.
Pizzeria.
I started to feel uneasy. I got the feeling that I was being watched. And that's when I noticed there was a peephole in the door.
Yeah, that peephole
"It's
looks
the pizza
dirty.
guy," I called out.
Like nasty looking.
I heard a low, harsh-sounding voice on the other side of the door, telling me to bring the pizza out back. I didn't like the idea of going back there. Something didn't seem right. "Are you sure, sir?" I called out. He didn't answer my question. The sound of footsteps didn't move away from the door, so I had the feeling he was still watching me. I almost found myself walking back to my car, but I decided I didn't want any trouble with my boss. The last time I brought a pizza back, he gave me attitude, so I reluctantly walked through the uncut grass and
He
around
gave
the
me
small house to
attitude?
the
Damn,
back.
what bastard.
I remember there was a shed and a little patio back there. In the patio, there was a table with 4 chairs surrounding it. In one of the chairs, facing away from me, I saw the head of somebody sitting in the seat. I began walking over and said, "Excuse me," but the person didn't even move an inch. "Excuse me," I said again louder. Then from behind me, I heard, "Psst, over here." I turned around to see a man poking his head out from the corner of the house, looking at me with a crazed smile. "Come over here, I want to show you something." I freaked out, turned around and ran around the house in the opposite direction, back to my car, for some reason still holding the pizza. I got in my car, started it, and got away from there. On my way back to the pizzeria, I pulled over to the side of the road and called the police. Eventually, I was informed that there was no sign of anybody having been in that house for a long time. I quit my delivery job a few days after that. I have no idea what would have happened to me had I gone up to that man, but to this day, I still wish I had just turned my head to see who or what was sitting in that patio chair.
I'm the Joker, baby. It was him. It was him. All right, one last one. This is my all-time favorite one because it's so weird. And then I'm gonna play some Tarkov.
There used to be a pond about half a mile away from my old house that I would commonly go fishing in. It was nicknamed Daryl's Pond. I still have no idea who Daryl was or why it was called that, but nobody owned it, so people would once in a blue moon go fishing there as well. It was usually me by myself, though.
Hey, you never been to that site?
I had dug a pole into the ground where I would tie a noose to and from my small kayak. I'd say it was about 3 in the afternoon when I rowed out to the middle of the pond, the sweet spot for getting a decent catch. There was another person coming out from the trees. I waved at him and gave him a smile. He hopped into a small boat.
This guy's haircut is like
the
the ultimate power.
And began to row over to me. As he got close enough where trying to speak to him wouldn't come off as obnoxious, I gave him a friendly, "Perfect day, isn't it?" "Yes, absolutely," he said. He didn't say anything after that, and I started to feel a bit awkward, as if I were obligated to keep some kind of conversation rolling now. "So, you come out here to throw some lines?" I asked.
Yo, throwing some
No,
lines sounds like perverted to me. I don't know if it's just my
Well, it's
brain.
never a bad day to relax on the pond, I said.
And throw some lines.
He continued to row closer to me until his boat collided with mine, creating a big thud. I was genuinely uncomfortable now. I didn't feel threatened, just weirded out. I was only 24 years old. This guy looked like he was late 40s or 50s. There was an awkward silence. I tried to just act like I was focused on trying to make a catch, but by now that wasn't even
you
on
want to
my
come over
mind.
and throw some lines?
This guy was weird.
What does that mean?
I didn't know what he wanted, and I was uncomfortable being so close to him.
You asking me to do drugs
I felt him
or
looking at me, or
sexual
at least
act?
in my direction, as I faced halfway to the opposite direction of him. I took a quick glance to my right. Yeah, he was staring at me. I decided to be ballsy and lock eye contact with him. After about 4 seconds, he looked away. "So, where are you from?" I asked him. "Up there." He pointed behind himself, in the direction of the woodsy hill leading past the dirt road. "Oh, you live by Suffolk?" I asked. No, I'm not," he said. "What made you decide to come out here?"
What?
I said. "Why not?" I continued to try and uncomfortably fill the awkward silences that kept coming up. His response.
That's not how you answer that question.
He didn't contribute anything to what was barely a
Where
conversation.
do you live over there? No, I'm not.
He just sat there not doing anything with half a smile on his face, looking either at me or in my general direction throughout. I was creeped out. My heart was racing at this point. I'd go as far as saying that I was nervous for my life. We were surrounded by trees in all directions in the middle of a pond. I started to row a bit closer to land, but in a very low-key kind of way, trying to play it off as me just trying to find a better spot to find some fish. I was horrified when I saw he was following me. "What a great day, huh?" I felt a shake in my voice. I got close enough to the edge of the pond where I finally told the man, "I think I'm going to call it a day." I turned to see his reaction. He was still staring at me, but his smile was gone now. "I can't let you leave," he said. He lifted his flannel to expose a handgun sticking out of his jeans pocket. As soon as I could process what I was looking at,
That
I dove
side
out
eye
of the
was
boat
so
for
good.
land, ran the whole half-mile uphill through the woods back to my
80s
house,
music
unlocked
turns
every
on
door
for
and
the
window as
rotoscope.
soon as I made it home. I pulled down the blinds to the dining room window, leaving it open just a crack for peeking outside undetected. It started to get dark out, and I left every light in the house off, still peeking out to the front yard, making sure I wasn't followed. The time came when I finally decided I wasn't followed. I realize now, like you, that not calling the police immediately was a huge mistake. I kept my bedroom
But it
windows
doesn't end
open to
there.
let the room air out. My
Why-
bedroom was
why'd
on
you
the
air it
second
out?
floor, so I wasn't worried about being watched through the window.
Your fucking fear?
About half an hour after shutting the light and falling under the covers, I heard the sound of leaves crunching from outside.
Hey, get bass. Get
I
bass.
sat up to hear it
No,
more
get bass,
clearly.
not bass.
It was definitely something walking around out there. Normally I would assume it was a deer or a bear, but after what just happened, I was still in paranoia mode. I sat up as still as a statue, except for my shaking out of fear, waiting as the sounds of the steps stopped. Hey buddy, you up there? Are you trying to sleep? Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you. I felt like 100 pounds just fell directly onto my chest. It was the same voice. I knew it right away. I didn't make a sound.
Yeah, but someone just like bumping into you while you're
downstairs
fishing
to the
and just like
kitchen
sitting there
and
is
grabbed the
bizarre.
phone,
It's a weird
practically
story.
crawling on my way out to avoid being seen through the open blinds.
It's such a weird
I
story.
called 911 like I should have earlier in the temporary safety of my bedroom.
Like,
I
yeah,
made
being
sure to
like,
whisper
hey,
into
what's
the
up?
phone as I was still hoping
I'm
that
fishing
hadn't
too.
yet heard or
It's one
spotted
thing.
me. 20 minutes felt like an hour as I sat behind my bed, waiting for the police to arrive in constant fear
Yeah, he's like
that
chicken,
I would hear glass breaking
playing
from
chicken with him.
downstairs, or a thud on the back door, or even just a voice again from down below my
Yeah, it's the
window
same
outside.
story.
The police did a
Followed
thorough
him.
investigation of the property in nearby woods, turning up nothing. They suggested I stay with
Turning
a
up
friend or a
nothing.
family member for a few days, and so I did. I never heard from or saw the man again, but I still moved a month later. I couldn't deal with the constant fear and paranoia of being watched through my windows. I feel much more comfortable fishing out by the bay now.
Jason got him. Fucking got him.